It's Thor's Day, and that means it's time for Thor's Day Comics. So this time we're doing Journey into Mystery number 111. As a special treat, we're going to use the IDW Artists Edition. This is one of those extra large Artists Editions. It's huge. Most of the art is from sort of like the early 60s when they worked off of like really big paper before they switched back to the smaller paper that's become the standard for comics since then. So we're getting a look at the original art, and some cool things are they're a little bit cut off, but you can still read some of Jack Kirby's margin notes. And as usual, Jack Kirby is the co-writer of these stories, even though he's not listed as co-writer. Written with the mastery of Stan Lee, illustrated with the genius of Jack Kirby, delineated with the delicacy of Chick Stone, lettered with the India ink of Artie Simic. And so this is part 2 of a two-parter set up in the previous issue. Jane Foster is at death's door. She is, one heartbeat away from death. And so Thor has created a time warp around this whole building, this whole house of horrors, this sort of booby-trapped house that Mr. Hyde and the Human Cobra have lured him into. And so as long as that time warp holds up, she won't die. But if that time warp goes away, then it's over for her. Hyde and the Human Cobra have a little extra power. Their power's been increased by Loki, so they're more of a match for Thor than they ever have been before. And just noting that Thor's hammer seems like it's reached its sort of standard hammer length. It started out like a polo mallet in the first couple issues, and now it's settled into the sort of standard length it has for the rest of the series. And so they get the drop on him. Beautiful perspective, very offbeat composition. And Jack Kirby superhero comics, in a lot of ways, are wrestling comics and follow a lot of the storylines. And wrestling, was a big deal on television in the 50s and 60s. As it is today, it has sort of these ups and downs in popular culture. And so this is kind of like, when it's one guy versus two, it looks like they're kind of trying to like pull him apart, and they're giving him more of a run for his money than ever. But you are speaking to one who has bested the storm giants of Asgard, the trolls of the netherworld, and they're fighting, and then he, sets up a fan to sort of blow them away. Nice, again, cartoon language, things going in and out of focus. And now Thor's got them subdued for the moment, and so he takes Jane Foster. He's got to find a safe place for her away from those guys. And then some more of the booby traps kind of spring up. And then we get like a little kind of Indiana Jones kind of thing. Thor throws his hammer into this room before he goes in, and the hammer activates a trap, which, drops this, concrete block on the room. And he notes that if he had gone in there, he would have been hurt, but Jane would have surely been killed. Maybe this is a place for her to rest and hang out. We get this really cool close up with the kind of black spotting, the sort of shading that is just very unique to Kirby. Chick Stone's inking just handles it really nicely. It's really great seeing all this stuff like in the original artwork, seeing the brush strokes. And so people outside, everyday person view is like so important to Kirby's work and to the Marvel the Marvel formula, if you want to call it that. And so they're sort of like, what's going on in that cottage? There's the time warp, things are real hazy. And so a guy throws a rock at it, but the rock just hovers in midair, because once you enter that time warp, time stops. And they're freaked out, they get away. Odin's watching the whole thing. Strange events transpire below, but Lord Odin shall not interfere. And so there he is in repose on his throne. Beautiful picture. And then Balder comes in with his hair looking better than ever. Poor unhappy Thor, if only Odin would permit him to marry the mortal girl. May I soothe thy troubled breast with a ballad, noble lord? If it please thee, brave Balder, for in truth I am sorely vexed. I sing of ancient times and of the love of a warrior for a maiden fair. And so this little song that Balder is singing is sort of part of a plan he has, this idea he has to inspire Odin to help Thor and help Jane Foster by reminding Odin through song of his own lost love. Soon caught under the subtle spell of Balder's ballad, Odin thinks back to his own younger days. Stately was she, and like unto a goddess. In all of Asgard there was none so fair, none so beloved of the warrior whom others called Odin. And yet their marriage could never be, for it was forbidden. But Odin would never give up, not even after he and his loved one took their last ride over the enchanted chasm together, lo, those many ages ago. And it is not specifically spelled out in the text, which makes me wonder if that was just an oversight or if this was a specific choice on Stan's part. But in the liner notes below, it's cut off, but you can read that, you can still make out that thinks of gorgeous goddess, Thor's mother. So, and look at her face. I mean, that looks like the mother of Thor. So, Kirby's idea was that he'd be singing about Thor's mother. And in the whole Jack Kirby, Stan Lee run of Thor, I think this is the only time we see or hear of any reference to Thor's mother. Who is she? Where is she? And this is, Kirby is introducing you to Thor's mother. And, something happened to her long ago. We don't know. Odin and her were together. Now they're not. And it's a very painful, nostalgic, beautiful, and sad memory for Odin. Your ballad brings back memories I have tried to keep hidden for centuries. And yet, now that I think back, Balder, you dare try to trick the noble Odin. Loki, you heard? Of course I heard. You seek to soften Odin's heart towards the Earth Girl. How lucky I arrived in time to warn my liege. And so now we're back to Thor's story. And so we sort of go back and forth between Thor's story and Balder's story. And Balder's story is a lot of fun. He goes on this whole epic quest while Thor is having, the fight of his life, kind of like the structure of Empire Strikes Back. And that becomes a pattern. We saw a little bit of it in like an earlier issue, and it kind of becomes a pattern throughout, the rest of the series of, Thor doing his thing. And then we cut to, Balder going on some kind of Asgardian quest. A lot of fun. So yeah, now the fight continues. A lot of great, Kirby classic battling. And now the bad guys turn on each other. Don't order me around, that kind of, I've warned you not to try to give me orders, Hyde. And now they start fighting each other because, of course, that's one of the ways we can contrast the good guys and the bad guys in this story. The, Thor and Balder have this, love and brotherhood for each other and would do anything for each other. And Mr. Hyde and the Human Cobra are constantly trying to, show who's top dog, and so their friendship is there's not much of a foundation there. And so he flings Mr. Hyde. Thor gives him a punch, and then no longer does the Cobra play second fiddle to Hyde, for I rely not on my strength alone. I have my own powerful version of a Cobra's bite. He launches his little mini missiles. Thor flings them back with his hammer, and they explode, releasing poisonous gas. Thor's fighting Mr. Hyde. The gas starts to fill the room, and Mr. Hyde makes a break for it. Thor covers his face with his cape. The gas kind of gets out, now that there's an opening in the wall. Thor throws his hammer at him. Now we're back to Asgard. And then it says in Kirby's border notes, meanwhile, Odin decides to help Girl. And then the text, the final text in the comic. Meanwhile, in Asgard, lordly Odin finally reaches a momentous decision. Although Thor may not take the Earth Girl for his bride, still I shall try to save her from death because of my love for my warrior son. By all the planets, this is a disappointment to me. So yeah, reestablishing Loki's villainy, that he wants Jane Foster to die. I mean, what a piece of shit. So Odin's got his little quill pen, his little feather. He's writing out a prescription. Jack's border notes say, give message to Loki to deliver to healer who lives beyond Badlands. Loki, by my imperial command, you are ordered to deliver this message to Hardal, the mystic healer who lives beyond the molten chasm. He will find a remedy for the one called Jane. The word of Odin is the law supreme. I shall obey at once, noble one. But Loki has no intention of following through on that promise. It's a dangerous journey to Hardall the healer, and Loki doesn't want to help. So he's just going to, sabotage the whole thing. He's going to just, take this and, throw it in the sewer. But no sooner does Thor's ageless archenemy turn about than he sees, I'll deliver that message, crafty one. We know thee too well to have it otherwise. Meantime, you shall stay with us. Can it be my own peers turning against me? Not so, Loki. We are not thy peers, for none can match thee in villainy or in deceit. So this is great. Thor's got his friends in the court, and they head Loki off. And now it's Baldur's quest. He's in, full, Lord of the Rings mode, the Ring of the Nibelungen, the kind of stuff that, the kind of movies Jack Kirby would have seen when he was a little kid. Baldur's riding through this land. A dragon takes note of him. A baby dragon takes note of him. Loki's up on the battlement of Castle Grayskull, looking down. I haven't lost yet. Many are the dangers between Baldur and his goal, and even the bold one is not infallible. So setting up a, some obstacles for that Baldur's going to face. And so, it's just, these are my favorite parts. The chemistry of alternating between these sort of Lord of the Rings questing bits and then the superhero slugfests, it's just a real winner. But this is my favorite stuff. So he's trotting through this narrow passage through a land of fire, and then in Jack's notes, more danger. Baldur sees something that makes him draw a sword. Up ahead, the one whose name is used to frighten children, the phantom whose very touch means death, and it is too late to avoid him. Thor threw his hammer last time we saw him, a couple pages ago, and now, we see the hammer continue. It's bouncing around, but Hyde surprises Thor, does a 180 and starts attacking him. The hammer's swinging around. He's like, see how you do without your hammer. And then another one of the hidden traps in this sort of House of Horrors activates and zaps Mr. Hyde. Mr. Hyde's knocked unconscious. Thor leans him up against a wall. It makes me think of the sort of things Jack Kirby would talk about in like his street fighting days, and you'd see the Thing doing this with one of the Yancey Street gang guys or something. But he's like, yeah, I'm gonna find some place where I can lean your unconscious self against while I continue on with my day. And so he hits into the wall, pulls back the circuitry that controls this place, and starts messing around with it. Luckily, my months of association with Iron Man and the Avengers has given me much knowledge of such earthly things, knowledge which will enable me to modify this system for my own unique purpose. He's tinkering with it, and then he's sending a charge through it because he knows that that the Cobra is sort of hiding in the ductwork, and so he sends a charge through, and it zaps the Cobra, and the Cobra has to get out of there because he's getting zapped to death. And it makes me think, Thor talks about how amused the immortals of Asgard would be to see the thunder god changing wiring like an earthbound electrician. But it kind of makes sense to me that Thor, being the god of thunder, would also be the god of electricity, the god of electricians, the god of electronics, the god of the computer, the same lightning that strikes in the sky, the same thunderous roar you hear is the same phenomenon that makes a computer work. Add this to my Thor run that I do at Marvel, I suppose. Adding God of electronics to Thor's resume. Thor likewise can become the god of electronics, god of the internet, the god of social media, the god of TikTok, the god of YouTube. Although your heart is evil enough, neither you nor Hyde have the wit nor cunning for true arch villainy. Because the guy behind them, the guy who gave them their power boost, is Loki. Loki's the real evil. And Thor is having a moment here, and it's real interesting. It's interesting, what Jack Kirby spells out in his notes, and then it's also interesting the choices that Stan makes in sort of the final verbiage. So in Jack's notes, it says, she's still in bad shape, but the house is in time warp, so she's still alive. If Thor lifts time warp, she will die. They may have to stay together in time warp for all eternity together. Now that, to me, that's a very poignant moment, and I really like that. I really like that thought of hey, if need be, I'll stay with you in this time warp forever, frozen in this moment, just to save your life. I will do that. Thor will do that. I don't know. It's kind of beautiful to me. It's sort of heartbreaking and pathos. And what Stan changes it to, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad thought. But like to me, it doesn't have the punch. It doesn't have the it doesn't kind of hit you in an unexpected way, the way, Jack's initial idea. Thor says, if I remove the time warp which engulfs this house, then Jane Foster will surely die. Yet I cannot continue it indefinitely, for it will cause too great a temporal displacement throughout the known universe. So he sets up a ticking clock that, okay, this can't last forever. So, I mean, that helps up the stakes. That's interesting. But, and it's in a fun sort of comic book way about a temporal displacement throughout the known universe, blah, blah, techno babble. But it's a little bit standard. Like it's like, yeah, okay, if I lift this, you'll die or whatever. But then this one, the idea of Thor and Jane Foster stuck in a house where time has stopped forever. Like that's kind of beautiful. And that could almost be, that could be like an ancient legend or something. That could be that could be the end of the Thor story. Maybe in like a what if issue or whatever, that Thor, spends the rest of his life, sort of caring for the nearly dead but still alive Jane Foster in this house that's, cut off from, the rest of the universe. That's interesting. It's original. It's heartbreaking. And so there you have it. Now back to Baldur's quest. I cannot avoid the phantom whose touch means death, but neither can you escape the blade of Baldur. So Baldur's got to face off against this like giant Asgardian phantom, maybe a wind giant or something, but very cool. In Jack's notes, it says phantom is a creature of and then like we don't know. I'm guessing maybe he says like an antimatter universe or something, because what happens is, have at you, creature from a foreign universe. Thy atoms are alien matter, as are the atoms of my sword to thee. And Baldur throws his sword at the phantom, and it hits them. And I've destroyed him. By the shining moons of Asgard, the phantom is no more. My sword, forged by Odin's hands, was the strongest. It survived while the phantom perished. And there, at the edge of the legendary molten chasm, Baldur's desperate gamble bears fruit. The instant his sword touches the phantom of death, the two alien objects, unable to exist in the same spatial sphere, reach instant critical mass. So yeah, more sort of techno-babble, but I mean, I love that kind of stuff too. A sword made of matter and a phantom made of antimatter, or some version of those things, cannot exist in the same place. And so, just really great stuff. And now, sort of noxious mushrooms that are spewing this poison gas, these like psychedelic mushrooms. He's in mushroom land. He's in the mushroom kingdom. And so he covers his horse's face with his cape to protect the not immortal horse. He's covering his own face with his hand, staying low to the ground, breathe the good air. And now he gets to the Valley of Swords lies ahead. No Asgardian has ever safely traversed through those upturned blades before. So now he's got to make his way through these like spikes. Again, fun quest stuff. This is a video game. This stuff really speaks to me. And so he rips his cape up into bits and ties and puts a large stone in each one and ties them to his horse's legs so the horse can walk safely across these spikes. Great problem solving there. And now the final thing, this rain of rocks. Only your great speed, my faithful mount, have enabled us to safely cross the valleys of avalanches. And now our goal is in sight. Who approaches the home of Hardal the healer? In Kirby's notes, it says, reaches moving mountains. So that was Kirby's name for this, the moving mountains. Who approaches the home of Hardal the healer? Baldur does, at the behest of noble Odin. Then come forth, brave one, and state your request. We have Jack's notes. Thor must lift the time warp. It's a hell of a way for the girl to spend eternity. Jane's basically in a coma, and he's like, okay, is this fair to her to let her stay in a coma, in a comatose state for an eternity? It's better that she take the risk of dying. He can become Blake and try to save. He realizes it's not fair to her to leave her in this state, and that he decides that the best thing to do is to lift the time warp and then just do everything he can with the powers of Don Blake, the medical powers of Don Blake, to save her life. When the time warp is lifted, adored one, I shall again become Dr. Blake, and I shall try to save you with every ounce of skill and strength that I possess. And if I fail, then we both shall die. For my heart will evermore be naught but a cold, withered ember if I should lose thee. And now I do what I must. May Asgard look upon thee with favor, Jane Foster. Once again, the mighty hammer swings, and once again, time begins to envelop the house as the time warp fades into nothingness from whence it came. So Thor's going to go for it. Oh, yeah, and I forgot to mention Saturday, May 6th is Free Comic Book Day, and there's going to be a Free Comic Book Day edition of I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee, my new book. There's going to be a comic book-sized excerpt of the final book that'll be available at comic book stores on Free Comic Book Day. Ask your retailer to set aside a copy for you. And now back to the show. But then, in the space of one single heartbeat, and in Jack's notes it says, no sooner does Warp Baldur's sword arrives. And that's what's on the cover of the issue. It's a really great cover. I don't have that issue in its original form, but it's a really great cover with Baldur out in Asgard space throwing the sword down into this time warp house. There is a vial attached and a brief note. Can this be the miracle for which I dared not even hope? Hardly trusting himself to believe it, his eyes misting up with tears of gratitude, the mighty Thor reads the brief note, his soul singing within him. The medicine is hers. Odin has ordained that the female shall live, Baldur. And this note, you can kind of make out where Kirby has written this note in the picture. Like, I assume anytime there's like any writing like this within the visual world of the comic, I attribute that to Jack. So Jack wrote this note, and Jack throughout in his liner notes, he I don't think he ever in the liner notes for this issue refers to Jane Foster as Jane Foster. He refers to her as the girl. Baldur calling her the female. It feels like that's Jack's writing there. Warp is lifted, only seconds to save the girl. So Thor, does his mad dash to give her the medicine. I feel like Grant Morrison lifted this storyline in Final Crisis. There's like a similar thing with Superman and Lois Lane, where she's dying and Superman's frozen time to keep her alive, but as soon as he speeds time back up, as soon as he like leaves warp speed or whatever, she'll die. So he's kind of steal from the best. And as the life slowly returns to the sleeping girl, the sword of Baldur begins to rise. Higher and higher it goes, its speed increasing with each passing second, until it reaches its master, who waits on the Rainbow Bridge. My mission is ended, the girl lives. So, pretty cool. Baldur's sword returns to his hand in the same way Thor's hammer does. They're both gifts from Odin, and I love that he's kind of like just, standing on the Rainbow Bridge is close enough. So he's not going to go all the way to Earth. There's no time for it. So he's on the Rainbow Bridge and he throws his sword. He can see Earth, throws his sword down to Thor. Just really great. And back on that small, seemingly insignificant planet, which spins eternally in the glittering cosmos man calls the universe. Thor, what happened? I seem to have had some awful nightmare. It is ended, lovely one. You must rest now. Hail, noble Odin, thy undeserving son gives thee thanks. And then gently the mighty immortal lifts the sleeping girl. Then he slowly turns his back upon his defeated foes and upon the house of darkness as he walks into the shining light of morning. So, this is just a great ending. This, big sort of this epic two-parter, high stakes. We thought Jane was really going to die and Loki was trying to murder her. And, Thor's friends pull out all the stops to help him as Thor is, doing everything in his power. And then this great, happily ever after kind of ending. This could be the ending of the series, And he carries her out like the end of An Officer and a Gentleman. You can imagine Love Lift Us Up Where We Belong playing as he sort of walks out with her. Great ending. And then, a nice capper to everything that's come before. But again, the best is yet to come. Thor is kind of the perfect choice for this kind of close examination because it just keeps getting better and better and better. It's really an amazing ride. I'm Tom Scioli, author of I Am Stan, a graphic biography of the legendary Stan Lee. And as I said before, there's a Free Comic Book Day version of I Am Stan that'll be available on Free Comic Book Day, Saturday, May 6th. Ask your local comics retailer to set aside a copy for you. And in the show notes below, there's a pre-order link where you can pre-order the full book of I Am Stan, which will be out in September. I'll see you next Thursday.